Welcome to Dads and Dollars podcast with your host, Stanley Funches, certified financial planner, business owner, author, speaker, and father of three. Listen as Stanley shares his valuable insights around fatherhood and finances gained from over 20 plus years of experience. You'll hear stories, lessons learned, and the ups and downs he and his guests have encountered on their journeys as fathers, professionals, and business owners. These shared lessons will help provide you a path for financial independence while celebrating the challenges of being a dad. Thank you for joining the conversation. Here's your host, Stanley Funches.
Welcome to Dads and Dollars, the podcast where finances and fatherhood are woven into everyday life topics. My name is Stanley Funches. I am a certified financial planner by profession and a father of three in this thing called life. We are glad you can join us for Season 1, Episode 14. And in this episode, we have business owner, government leader, artist, and father of two, Ed Fields, joining us today on Dads and Dollars. Welcome, Ed.
Well, hello. It's good to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you.
Man, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. When I started this podcast about 5 or 6 months ago, I can tell you in the initial planning, you were one of my dream guests to get on. So I appreciate you taking the time out.
Oh man, I'm honored. I'm just glad to be a part of the journey, to be a subscriber to the podcast, and to hopefully just share some earned knowledge. Having bumped my head a couple times, but also as a new father, relatively new father, to just hopefully folks will find some partnership, some fellowship, some camaraderie here in the dialogue.
Yeah, I was talking to my daughter a few days ago, and I was telling her just the podcast. The whole premise of the podcast is experience, right? We just want to share our experiences, the things that we learn, either by our elders telling us these things, or maybe some bought lessons, some things that we might not listen to, but we learned them the hard way. And if we share those experiences, then hopefully it'll help the next generation or people who are going down the same road that we went down. So yeah, that's definitely the theme. So just kind of, I don't know if you remember, but I first met you, gosh, man, it was probably 15, 20 years ago, maybe. You were starting the leadership of the African American Business Council at the Chamber. So they had former leadership. You came in, and I can say it was night and day once you came in and kind of took over that role. I think the name later changed, but your organization skills and the way you brought people together, I always admired that. And I followed your journey as you've gone from working within the Chamber of Commerce to your own, being a business owner yourself, then, your civic leadership, and now working in government and helping the mayor. I've watched that from afar, and it has been, to me, a very effective, great career. So tell the audience a little bit about you and what it is through that journey that has stuck with you the most.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to share, and thank you for the introduction. I guess two things come to mind. Civic engagement has been the thread that goes through all of those different chapters and seasons of my life. And it's also one of my deepest passions. You and I are both tall guys. You're actually a real baller, and I balled a little bit. But I will tell you, so when people ask me, hey, so you play ball? And I would say I did, but civic participation is my actual sport. That's the game I love, no matter what the dimension was. As a business owner or as a so-called government person, the thread that runs through it is civic engagement. So that's my bread and butter. That's what I thrive on. That's part of my life mission and the thing that really gratifies me the most. And so I got into this work, as many of us do, by accident. I attended Alabama State University for undergrad. I graduated with a degree in business administration with a concentration in marketing. Now, I came south from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Why? Because we don't have HBCUs in the Midwest, except for a couple. You have some in Indiana. There might be one in Southern Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. But by and large, our HBCUs in this nation, and therefore the world, are in the South. and nobody has more of them than Alabama. And so I ended up in Montgomery, did well at Alabama State University as a student leader. As we think about my journey and my career, I go back to the walls of my college dorm in apartments where I would tape all these certificates of participation from different nonprofits and whatnot. It was literally the wallpaper I had. And I was always proud of that. I'd take it down and put it back up everywhere I moved. And I moved a lot, obviously, as a college student, including summers going back home. So that's the thing that runs through it. When I finished college, I was actually doing spoken word poetry and gave my resume to somebody who gave it to somebody who gave it to someone at the chamber. And that's how I landed the job doing workforce development there. And so from August 2000 until today, 22 years later, I've been in Birmingham doing, I think, some pretty good work.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's interesting. So as a young man, you took pride in your participation in group activities and doing the volunteer. Is that where you got a lot of the organizational skills, seeing that in the early stages and trying to be effective in those type of group settings?
Yeah, that's probably where I practiced it most. But I will tell you that I made a mistake when I went to Alabama State University. I thought I was going to get a degree in marketing. I actually was going down to pursue a degree in marketing, but as it were, they didn't have marketing degrees. They had business administration degrees. And for those who may not know the difference, a marketing degree means there are many more marketing-oriented classes in the last 2 years. You really starting almost immediately. And once you go into the business school, well, I ended up as a business administration major taking coding, taking operations, taking management, taking accounting and finance, and getting a very well-rounded undergraduate experience. And the first time I went to the operations management class, which I had no idea what operations management was, or production management actually is what it was referred to. The first time I saw a Gantt chart, I fell in love. I mean, I literally saw the spreadsheet and the critical path to getting work done. And I thought, oh my God, this is awesome. So I've just always been oriented in that way. I've always been a neat person, just in my personal life. And it's not perfect, but Stanley, it really, careers and what we do are often connected to the essence of who we are or what we've had really massive exposure to. And given that I didn't have a whole lot of exposure to production management or project management and organization, I would have to say it's just more germane to my personality.
Oh, that's awesome. Look, so that explains a mystery that I've had about how really good you are at those things. I remember when, and I can't remember what year it was, but when I heard that you were working on the mayor's campaign, I was like, oh, he's going to win. I mean, I didn't even know who the guy was or who the candidate was, but they said, hey, Ed is working on that and kind of helped lead some of those efforts. I was like, oh, yeah, that's a slam dunk. What part of your private sector, business owner, the college, the Gantt chart, all those things woven together help you be a part of in your role today and how you help lead the mayor's effort, get reelected, all those things. What part of those things come together to that you bring to the table?
Well, all of them. I mean, you talk about being a slam dunk. It wasn't to get him elected. It was the challenge of a lifetime. And that's one of the reasons I took on the challenge, because it was, for a lot of people's perspective, a little nuts. And I knew it not because they told me, but by the deafening silence of those whom I've known for a while. It was a risky endeavor. However, I knew what his strengths were. I knew what my strengths were. And I'm saying all this to say that it was one of those rare projects in one's career where you literally have to pull on every bit of experience, personal and professional, civic, getting tested emotionally, intellectually, technically, creatively. It was one of those. And I would just say that has continued from the time that we won in August of 2017, or October 2017, and went into office November 28th, 2017 until now. It has just required every single thing that I have in me. What's been different because of my role as senior advisor, I wear two titles, but one of those, it's very evident, and I've really grown to appreciate the value that I provide. It's not always been something that I've embraced very well, but having been in so many rooms and having so much exposure to key leaders, how they think, who they are, has served us really well because we have a relatively young leadership team. And there were rooms I was in 20 years ago that people weren't, just because I had the fortune of older people, more mature people, basically blessing me in and letting me be sitting in the room. And that early exposure wasn't just good technically, it was good from a relational standpoint. So I walked in the door with a lot of credibility in one hand, a lot of awareness in another, and just understanding history. Who's cousin? In this world, you gotta know how to move. You gotta know where the landmines are. You gotta know where there's opportunities to ethically exploit for the mission at hand. And that's where all my previous experiences really came in, from the chamber to my entrepreneurial endeavors to my civic endeavors, and even my creative endeavors, being a writer and a poet, and to a far lesser extent being a calligrapher. Just all of these things have helped ground me and connect me to different communities in a way that is unique.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things I'm hearing you say there too is those relationships. And so for the young people out there who listen to the podcast and people who are trying to push their careers forward or provide their service, the relationships and how you navigate and build those relationships, genuinely build them in a serving manner is a key to success, probably in any field that you're in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's almost cliche. The company you keep and birds of a feather flock together and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think it's just practice. I mean, I really do see this. When I was younger, I didn't understand why doctors and attorneys would call their businesses practice, because, hey, if you're cutting me open, I don't want you practicing. I want you to know it's game time. It's real. My life is on the line. But this idea that you can have a craft that you can master and aspire to perfect, but as soon as you get there, there's something that evolves and changes, and you have to evolve with it. And that's what makes it a practice. And I would say one of the most enduring practices of excellence of any professional of any stripe is the practice of relationships and nurturing them and extracting the best out of them, because you got to put the best into them. And so knowing how to do that is as much art as it is science.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it'd be applicable to a lot of people in all types of skill sets. We talk about, capital and money and we talk about all those things, but really probably the most valuable thing is how you build those relationships and how you take your skill sets and look to evolve over time. Right. That's probably more valuable. You can do that at any skill set level. So we talk about evolution. So the city of Birmingham, I think, and this probably applies to every top tier city, second tier city, however they describe these cities. The city of Birmingham is evolving, right? And there's a lot of change and opportunity. What would you tell young people, not just specifically about Birmingham, but maybe so to a certain extent? How can they get engaged? What's important for them to be thinking about civically, and what they should look for in a city as they're looking to move and grow?
Yeah, well, people come with their own needs. They have a need to find a partner from a romantic standpoint. They have a need to find the next step in their career. And so for that, it's our job to make the city competitive, to create enough venues and spaces where people can ladder up. And that's on us. That's on city leaders. It's on entrepreneurs. It's on a collection of folks to create space for younger folks, like your kids, to come back to Birmingham and say, yeah, I'm coming to Birmingham because there's a conspicuous opportunity, not just because, I feel some sort of sense of loyalty. It's got to be more than that to really not just get them, but to keep them here. So for that, though, I think for people who are trying to find their way, which is partially what I heard you saying, is, what should they be looking for? Well, first, not everybody knows what their actual passion is. And I find that there's a lot of people, particularly younger people, who are looking for a silver bullet on how they're going to change the world. And the reality is, in the age of Christ, when people weren't living much past the age that he was killed, that decision was and the options were far more limited. In the day now where the average, where the mortality rate, where people are living into their 70s and 80s, and I have a 3-year-old, Stanley. By the time he asked me the other day if he's going to live to 100 because he can count to 100, will I be 100? And I was like, yeah, you probably will. You probably will be 100. And so that means that, we should be thinking more dynamically and not think about the singular thing that we will do, but think maybe about seasons of life. So I like to think about the 4 T's, Stanley: time, talent, treasure, and then my favorite one, testimony. So young people should be thinking about, where do I want to spend my time? With no judgment, no critique, just where do I want to spend my time? Is it laying in bed or is it hiking on the mountain? Is it volunteering? Is it nursing? Whatever the thing is, where do you want to spend your time? And talent, if you have an identifiable talent, to really be thinking about how you can apply that talent. Maybe you're a good cook. Maybe you are good with numbers. What's the best way for you to do that? And to find spaces where you could practice and get exposure, whether that's mentors, books, or workshops or whatnot. Treasure, obviously, it's all about money. It's really about, in the form of philanthropy, it's about how you can leverage your impact and maybe partnering with other people to do that collectively. And the last one is testimony. If you own a part of your story, if you know what you've been through, if you know who you are, and for whatever part you do or don't know, for the part you do know, finding ways to tell that story in a way that can impact people. Because for everyone listening to this, I'm sure that we could all think about that one teacher, the one teacher that impacted us most. And that person may not have been the brightest, the sharpest, but they cared so much. And you know exactly how they cared because you could talk about that. That's part of your story and your testimony, and that has real value. That's valuable. That's not just special to you or precious to you. It's precious to the world. And the more we can kind of hold on to that, the more we'll see how a city like Birmingham can help those 4 T's manifest in a way that's really, really impactful.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I'm gonna have to remember that because, and I think about it even as, I'm probably in the 3rd quarter of life. I would say, I probably got hopefully God willing, I'm in that 3rd quarter, but just that message of, the testimony is a lot more varied and stronger. So even people who are older and more seasoned in this, them sharing that and being able to pour back in to the community is important, finding that and using their time wisely. You get a sense of urgency the older you get because you realize, hey, look, there's only so much time that God's going to give us on this earth. And so how much can we give back, right, at the same time? So I definitely have to remember that. And I think that for all our listeners in whatever age range, I would say, hey, your testimony, your time, talent, treasure, figure out how you can use that to better others.
Let me tell you a quick story. I got a phone call from the former commandant of the Marine Corps. The former commandant, this is the guy who runs the Marine Corps, 2 million Marines under his command, 5-star general. And he was very involved with our administration. He was the mayor's co-chair of the mayor's transition team, also the former president of Birmingham Southern College. He called me midway through the first term. He said, Ed, how's it going? So what are you thinking about doing next? And I said, I don't know yet, General Krulak. I've been thinking about it, but I'm not sure. I promised myself I would get it done, but I haven't yet. He said, well, how old are you? I said, well, I'm 44. And he nearly jumped out of his chair. He said, Ed, you're 44. That is so exciting. That is so exciting. You know why? And I said, why? Now, mind you, this man is just about 80 years old, and he's got about as much energy as you and I. Actually, he certainly exceeds. We're too cool. He's exuberant. So he goes on to say, Ed, think about it like this. You were literally about to be able to live your entire life all over again. The first 20 years of your life, you were growing up. The second 20 years of your life, you were figuring it out. So literally take your age divided in half. Think about it that way. Now you get to live another 40 years if you take good care of yourself and have all the insights. And if you take care of yourself as much bigger as I do. And that was so powerful. So he said at the end of that remark, he said, Ed, whatever you do next, don't chase money.
Yeah.
You have time. Do something that you really like that's going to have impact.
Wow. Look, that's a Daz and Dollar message. That's a golden Daz and Dollar message because, and kind of, we'll kind of switch a little bit more personal because that, as men, as dads, and you're balancing, careers, business, trying to be effective, but you're also balancing the family aspect of it too, and taking care of yourself and realizing that, hey, there's more work to be done. There's more life to be lived. How do you find that balance for you at this point in your life?
Well, it's not terribly difficult. I mean, finding time can be challenging at times, but first you got to want to. I mean, not want to. Let me not say that, because a lot of people so-called want to do things. You just have to be committed to it. When I went through the transition out of my business, so I was in a period where I was the intersection of things that were happening. I was in the process of selling the business, starting a new job, and entering into a phase of a separation. And from a time and energy standpoint, I was really, really, really exasperated. I mean, really exasperated. Transitioning staff, transitioning clients, producing for clients while also producing for a new employer and figuring things out. I legitimately was burned out. And the reason that that's important to tell you is that I made an internal commitment once I came through that I would never go through that again. And that was when I was no kids. I had time, as they say. Well, today, as a co-leader here in the city of Birmingham, I stay incredibly busy. And now I got 2 kids and a wife and a bunch of other responsibilities, a mother who's got some health issues, and there's an awful lot going on. But I don't ever feel any tension about my commitment to taking care of myself, about going for a hike, about, whatever it is. I've got hobbies now. I couldn't tell you I had hobbies 10 years ago. I got things I would have liked to have done. Today, I would tell you I just make time. I make time for it, because the alternative is to not be present. And man, I'm 47. And as a Black man, 47 years old, you got to be conscientious of our health and mortality and even our spiritual health. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I struggle with some of these things, but they're never not present. I'm actively working on the things that I say are important to me. And that feels good. That actually, if you were asking me about success, I would tell you that being in a place where I'm constantly engaging things that I say are really important to me, and I'm doing that, even if I'm not winning all the time, is very gratifying. I feel like the Lord called me home. I could feel that I've done much of what I need to.
Yeah. So it's a clarity that comes, but it's an intentionality as well, right? You're very intentional about, hey, this is what's important. This is how I'm gonna spend my time at this moment, and whatever is to be after that, right? Yeah. But I think that peaceful, I talk to different families all the time, and I talk to, men and women both. And I think the thing that we have to all kind of focus on is that we can't do it all. And I think early in life, we all feel like that we need to do it all, right? Whatever that all is for you. I mean, it could be, hey, these are all the things I want to be in life. This is all the stuff I want to do. And I got to do it all now. I think as time goes on, we learn that there are different seasons, there are different stages. You can attack things in different ways. And so I would tell people I can tell you one of the things that I learned, and it was probably in my 40s, early 40s, maybe 42, 43. I read a book, Failing Forward, from John Maxwell. Because even though at that period of time, hey, I'm running a business, I have, a very good family. Everything from the outside looking in. People like, hey, you got a great life. But at the same time, I know where I wanted to be and I know where I wasn't. And I always felt for about a 5 to 6 year stretch that I was failing. That like, man, this is just the worst. I mean, I don't know what to do every day. But when I read that book, it brought so much clarity to me that, you know what? Maybe you are failing. But the thing about it is you fail forward. You try things. If it doesn't work, it's okay. What did you learn from it? How do you move forward? And to me, that was life-changing to me. It really was. It shifted my whole paradigm from looking at whatever I was going through as the end to looking at it, oh, it's just another part in the path, and I need to pick up a nugget and keep going.
Yep, that's right.
And so tell me about, you said you're a young dad. Tell me about some fatherhood challenges, some successes, some things that you like, hey, man, this is all of what I thought it would be, or maybe not quite as much.
Well, the beauty of doing it this stage of life is, man, while the experience is new for me, it's not brand new, meaning that I've got godsons and nephew and so many different young people in my life that I've interacted with. So I just try to focus on being present with them. So my 3-year-old is with us all the time, and he's full of energy, and apparently he looks just like me, and he's got a lot of my traits, and that's been a little I don't know, surprising. It's sweet, but I love him. It's a very, very, very sweet situation, and there's no downside on it. I can't even think of one. It's just really all been good with my wife and him in that regard. My 15-year-old, my stepson, but I just call him my son. And we have a great relationship. He does teenager stuff that we deal with from time to time. And so we have a good relationship with his dad and stepmom. And so we kind of co-parent on that side. So the challenges are probably more with just navigating the teen years, the wonder years as they were, and being a good partner for him. And so, and then making time for activities with them, which is something I struggle with a little bit because nothing to do with the other 3 parents. Is really just he'd rather be in his phone, and I have to switch from, because look, my personality is, if you don't really want to spend time with me, we're good. I got plenty of other things to do. But for a kid, if you leave them to just be in their phones, that's exactly where they will stay, like forever. And so it's finding ways to engage him and not feel some kind of way about him. Like just being able to manage that whole dynamic is something that's important to me, and I'm still very much figuring that out. That's my truth on that front. That's the part I've got to continue to navigate. I do tell my wife frequently, he's 15. He'll be out of here very, very soon. Like very soon. So every moment he goes back and forth between mom and dad's house, and so when he's with us, like we really got to be intentional with what we do. So I've just got to figure out how to do that even better from my position. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure. And so you mentioned something, and just for people out there who are in the co-parenting, situation, you got 2 or 3 nuggets of, hey, look, this really works for us. Maybe you guys should see if this experience will work for you. That you guys kind of have a tenet?
I don't know, man. I still feel like I'm so new. I've been married for 4 years. I got a 3-year-old. I mean, it all came together very quickly. There's a couple things that went right on the front end. First, when early into the relationship, before my wife and I were married, I sat down with my stepson's dad, and we had a very long lunch meeting, and we just talked. It was really more about values alignment, and I already knew him and he already knew me passively, but we hadn't really been in fellowship or a relationship together. So we don't spend a lot of time together, but we're very positive. We have very positive relations. And I think that started early when we set that tone by sitting down. And then once or twice we sat down as co-parents. That's not always possible depending on the situation, because it can be dicey. But in that case, it worked out for us. The other thing that we did was really focus on issues related to the child. So when Xander was thinking about really wanting to play football, each one of the parents had something to say about him doing that, going into middle school, and what that can mean for establishing a rhythm with grades and studies and social engagement and all of that. So it was a 360-degree conversation. We basically came to some agreement, even if there was some disagreement along the way. And that worked out really well. Again, that's not possible for everyone, but picking a moment in time to do that instead of trying to maintain some sort of constant engagement can take some pressure off of the relationship and just focus on sort of the big milestones that are coming up.
Yeah, so it sounds like being a little more proactive in the conversation to building that try to attempt to build a relationship, right? And then focusing on, and not everybody focusing on their own personality, but what's going on with the child and how can we best be there for the child. That sounds like two of the things that's worked well for you guys.
Yeah, that's worked pretty well for us.
Yeah, well, it sounds good. So all right, so if we kind of take a little bit, you mentioned when you did the time, talent, and treasure, right? So the treasure part of it, as well as the story you gave about the Army general, and saying not focus on finances, but this is dads and dollars. So what are some of the things throughout the course of your journey that you could say, hey, here are some positive things around dollars that I've learned that I wish I would have known, or tell us about your journey when it comes to finances, financial planning, you're in your different stages of life that you might want to share with everyone. And again, some nuggets of wisdom.
Well, yeah, I could share a few. First, well, in no particular order, I'll go here. I wrote a blog post once about the 7 things I did well in business, because oftentimes we criticize ourselves, and I got my list of things that I didn't do so well. But I wrote down things I did do well. And one of them one of the insights rather, was around forming an advisory council or advisory board. And I think not isolating ourselves when it comes to money is very important, whether that's through securing a financial advisor or having a board of advisors. I think that not isolating oneself is really important. And that's been good for me in most stages of my life. And they haven't been present in all the stages of my life for that matter. One of the things I did not do well was set my prices at a point or recalibrate who I was selling to so that I could bring in more revenue. And I know that sounds like it is a very business specific comment, but the broader application for anybody listening is, get clear about your value and your worth. And that's more than just praying about it. You got to do that. But it's also about doing more research. Really talk, again, not isolating yourself, really getting outside of your head and finding out who's willing to pay for what. And then even challenging that notion by showing or demonstrating more value. I think there's money that we leave on the table that is 100% because we don't know how to go get it and or how to optimize the ask. So those are just a couple of insights. Early on, I will tell you, one of the best things I've ever did, and you said this when we were working together, I learned how to budget fairly early. I think it's maybe started late in college, but when I graduated from college and I became a young professional, man, I read everything I could, all the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all the typical personal finance books, Richest Man of Babylon, just really got myself into it. And then I started figuring out the budgeting piece. And man, I still use my budget to this day, my monthly budget. I've added some sheets like over the years, my net worth, but also sheets like annual expenses just so I can be tracking those. I've tried tools like Mint. My bigger point is by starting early or just starting at all, I've been able to find my own sort of system and rhythm that works even across all these different seasons, being self-employed, working for this company, now working for a government entity, being married, being separated, being divorced, being married, having kids, properties, all of that. All of those just require or you benefit from experience and practice. And it doesn't matter what stage you're in. Some people may be listening to this and maybe, on the older end of the spectrum, but it's just never too late to step in there and start working with platforms and systems that you can understand and use them regularly so that you can refine the understanding of where you are financially.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Making sure that there's people around you, whoever that you can trust, that can hold you accountable, right? You mentioned that very early on. Monitoring a budget, whatever stages and whatever is going on in life, trying to be consistent with that as best you can. I mean, budget is such a scary word for a lot of people, but just knowing where your money's going and how you're prioritizing it is a very key thing. So So and kind of wrapping up, what are some of the things that if I guess from a artist perspective, if you kind of look back, I know that some part of you probably look back and just from a learning perspective, but what are some of those things you would tell younger Ed and that, hey, younger Ed, you're 47 now, when you were 27 or 22, what would be some wisdom you would give to younger Ed?
I've been thinking about that and I still don't have a good answer. There's just a couple of things that come to mind, and they may not be all that significant, but I'll share them anyway. The first is just really affirming to say, keep doing what you're doing, because much of what I was doing in terms of habits and practice was solid. And, when you're younger, you're trying these different things and you keep trying it. And sometimes you try something that's actually really working, but then you step away from it too fast. And that's true in all domains. We know that when it comes to investment strategies, as I'm sure you advise a lot of people, stop switching up the strategy all the time because you're eroding your capacity to get that compounding value of time or the present value of time just working for you. But the other money rather working for you. But the other thing is it works in the spiritual domain as well.
Yep.
Like getting that depth of practice of prayer and fellowship. So I don't know how they would have gone differently, but those would be a couple things I would say. It's just keep doing what you're doing. Keep praying on it. I struggle with that because for the most part, and this may sound awkward, sound odd to you, but most of the things I was on were pretty good. The one thing, okay, I got one for you, Stanley, because I've heard it from other people over the years, not a lot, but for those people who could speak into my life, it would be to continue to dream bigger. Just dream bigger. You may not know how to do everything that you were dreaming about, but the exercise of dreaming and giving yourself permission to do that is an important thing to do. Dream big.
Dream big. Look, man, I think that's a great way to end. I think for all the dads and that are out there at whatever age stage they're in, as well as the young folks and the ladies who listen to the podcast. Look, we dream big. They tell us when we were, gosh, I'm gonna kill the saying, but reach for the stars. You land on the moon, you're okay. I mean, I don't know which one's farther, but that's reach for the stars, you land on the moon. So dream big and just keep going at it. Well, Ed, man, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Dads and Dollars. It's been great.
Thank you so much, man. This is great. Appreciate what you're doing, man.
Hey, man, thank you. All right. Thank you all for listening to Dads and Dollars. And like we always say, please rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. We really would need those 5 stars, and, share our podcast with others. Until next time, thank you for listening to Dads and Dollars.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Dads and Dollars. If you found the information shared today valuable, please share with your friends and family via your social media. If you have a request for a future financial topic for Dads and Dollars, please email us at ask@dadsanddollars.com. For further information on your financial journey, you may purchase The Quest for Financial Independence, 10 areas of your financial planning you should not ignore, by visiting our website, dadsanddollars.com. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance reference is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to make a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. Asset allocation does not ensure a profit or protect against a loss. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of these strategies. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Guests and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Intellis Advisory Group. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered through Intellis Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Intellis Advisory Group and Intellis Wealth Management are separate entities from LPL Financial.